Institute of Management and Mass Communication, I welcome you, sir, to our webinar, which is we conduct a series of special webinars in which we invite people who have held important positions across disciplines to come and address our students. This time we are really privileged that you have agreed to speak to our students at a very, very short notice. Mr. Sain is a veteran police officer, 1960 batch IPS, held important positions across the gamut of the different departments. He was the police officer of the Odisha cadre, held important positions there, came to BSF, was additional director general there, came to Intelligence Bureau, and the crowning glory was, of course, as the director of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy in Hyderabad, which is the ultimate dream for any IPS officer in the professional career. And that's what after retiring from the police service, Mr. Sain has been engaged in a lot of intellectual activities and has written several books. And that's why he is the most apt choice to speak in a subject of the webinar that we have today, policing in a democratic state. Today, we in India find police, which is supposed to do the law and order work. Today, police is being used by different political authorities as an instrument for victimizing their opponents. We have seen it across the platforms, political platforms. We've seen it how Delhi police is doing day after day in the last so many years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. In so many years, their roles have become controversial, has been commented upon. It's not simply the Delhi police which reports to the central government. We saw the police being used as a weapon in Rajasthan, where the chief minister used the police against his own deputy to humiliate him. And we also have seen in West Bengal how Mamata Banerjee has ruthlessly used the police force to further her political interests. So in that kind of a situation, how do we actually maintain our democratic culture? How do we ensure that the police, which is just supposed to be an instrument of law and order, does not become an instrument where you violate the very law and order for pleasuring your political masters? And that's what I hope all of us would be able to listen to a veteran voice of Mr. Shankar Sain, and after his lecture, we'll have a brief question-answer session. Over to you, Mr. Sain.
Thanks, Mr. Mohanty. I sincerely thank the Jagran Institute for giving me the opportunity of interacting with the staff as well as the students. The subject I chose was policing in a democratic society, because that's a very key issue now. In a totalitarian state, police is under the control of one man or one person or one group. But in a democratic society where people elect their own representatives, police have to be responsive to the public. And the question arises, how far in India we have succeeded in doing so? The first question I would very briefly mention that policing in India has been there from time immemorial. Village policing was done by the village staff, village panchayats. But in urban policing, there was an officer which is men. But the new change came when the Britishers came to rule India and the Police Act of 1861 was passed. That created the model of police which persists in India even today. It was an imperial police, colonial police meant to subjugate the civilian population. You have to bear in mind that in 1857, the Sepoy Mutiny came. The British rule was shaken, but after crushing the mutiny, the Britishers thought, yes, army is necessary to rule the country, but to control the sepoys, but for exercising control over the civilian population, some kind of a civilian police, which can be an instrument of colonial rule, can be created. And that is what was created. What you see today, the structure, it remains the same, the century-old structure. The DG of police at the top, Inspector General of Police, Deputy Inspector General of Police, number of rank, constables, and authority is totally controlled by the government. That continued for a long time. In 1902, I can just very briefly I'll mention, the police commission was set up under, at the time, the Viceroy of India was Lord Curzon. It suggested a number of reforms in the police, how to make police more efficient, how to see that the police observe the rules, how to set up the crime branch and the forensic laboratories and all. But the basic question, how police have to be responsive to the public, how police have to guarantee the rights of the lawful rights, the constitutional rights of the people, was never mentioned. So it remained, as Mr. Mohanty has just now said, a ruler-appointed police. And that tradition persisted even now. So now the question is that first I'll mention the points which Mr. Mohanty raised about the structure of the police and the need for police reform, and then I'll mention about the other aspects of democratic policing. The first thing is that a second police commission was appointed when the Janata government came into power in 1878. And the idea was to examine how far the police remains responsive to the public and what can be done to ensure that police become an instrument of democratic rule and not the colonial rule. It suggested a number of reforms, but the key aspect of the reform was how to depoliticize police, and it suggested certain measures. For example, at present, you know, the Inspector General of Police is, or the head of the police, is just at the beck and call of the Chief Minister. Here he can be transferred at any time, and for whatever be the reason. So it suggested that there should be fixity of the tenure of the head of the police. It must be for 2 years. Without sufficient reasons, he cannot be transferred. That should be there. Then it suggested also the formation of a committee to ensure that the government utilizes the police lawfully and it is not abused, its power is not abused and misused. Then there were other recommendations also. But the point to remember is, this is the point, and this is a point where I would like to draw the attention of the faculty of the institute and the students, that it has been uniformly opposed by the politicians of all hues, not only Congress, not only BJP, not only Communist. Every ruling dispensation wants the police at their beck and call. It has to be ruler-appointed police. In this connection, but this has also to be known, perhaps many of you know it also. A senior police officer, Mr. Prakash Singh, and went to the Supreme Court with a PIL and suggested that these are the reforms recommended by the Police Commission, and for maintenance of law and order in the country, for efficient running of the internal security, these reforms are to be implemented. Supreme Court took long 10 years, but it gave a judgment suggesting that these are the basic changes which are to be done, and which we mentioned that some kind of a security commission, fixity of the tenure of DG of police, separation of investigation from law and order wing, police complaint authorities, so the complaints in the police are properly investigated, etc. And you know, most of the state government did not implement it. They opposed it tooth and nail. Many of them passed laws which are more retrogressive, bringing police under the greater control of the government. So this is where the matter stands, that somehow or other, the politicians are unwilling to give up the stranglehold over the police, because they know without police at their beck and call, they are not of much consequence. They can threaten others, they can bully others only when the police are at their beck and call. And police have become the ruling party's police. So what is to be done, that is another issue we'll come to later on. But now we have to keep in mind the structure of the Indian police. What are the problems? Problems are many. For example, one big problem of before the police is that the structure of the police. Structure of the police is that we have senior supervisory officers at the top, IPS officer, deputy superintendent of police, then inspectors, sub-inspectors, and last not the least, the constabulary. They constitute 70, almost 70% of the force. And they are not poorly paid, not well trained, facilities are inadequate. So this is, as one expert called, the police commission called, Dharamveer Commission called it, Achilles' heel of Indian police. This is the weakest point of Indian police. Those who are the most in number, who are to react to the police or to the public often, are not trained, not trained properly. So this is a problem which we have faced, and police, and also the infrastructure facility, the accommodation is poor, pay is inadequate. So this is a big weakness of Indian police. Then, even then, there is another is the shortage of manpower. Large number of vacancies exist in various ranks, and they calculated that almost 2 to 3 lakhs of vacancies are there all over the country. You know, United Nations made a study. They said that per at least 10,000 people, 10,000 people, there should be the strength of the constable should be, the strength of the police force should be 200 or 226. India, it is far less. The minimum requirement of the police per population, police population ratio is totally inadequate. But more important point to which I would like to draw your attention is that the police has, this is the point which in democratic society, police has to be accountable. Police must be accountable. Otherwise, power can be misused, abused. Basic characteristic of democratic societies and the police role in democratic societies, that certain powers are given to the police for maintenance of law and order, for preservation of peace in the society. But there are restrictions, there are checks so that the powers are not misused, they are not abused. So these checks and balances are there. So how far these checks are effective and how far they are not. And this is where we find that in our society, police is not very accountable. Accountable in a sense, yes, it is accountable to law. You can prosecute the police in the court, you can take cases in the court of law, but disposal of cases is poor, and very often nothing happens too much, nothing happens very much. Some action is taken, but police remains not very accountable. You have mentioned that my innings in the National Human Rights Commission. I was the first Director General of the Commission. And there, one of the problems is the numerous complaints used to come. The biggest quota of complaints was against the police. Large number of complaints of various kinds were there. And custodial death, custodial rape, fake encounters, abuse of authority, insulting behavior, etc. And we found that some of the complaints against the police were mischievous complaints. There is no basis in them. But some of the complaints are true. Some of the complaints, very serious complaints of custodial death, some of custodial torture were true. And then question comes, what is to be done? So the National Human Rights Commission issued an instruction that whenever a custodial death or custodial rape takes place, intimation has to be given to the commission by the district magistrate or SP within 24 hours. And if it is not done, adverse presumption will be drawn that something they are trying to conceal or trying to suppress. So this was the direction issued by the commission. So reports used to come. Sometimes the more reports from West Bengal, sometimes more from Punjab, sometimes from Karnataka, it used to vary. But one unvarying feature was that despite all these instruction of the commission, all the seminars we organized, Human Rights Commission, many seminars I organized, the interaction with the state police, not much change. Not much change. The figure of custodial torture and death in police custody was 150 or 155. It continues. By and large, it may be a little variance here and there. And jail custody death, but I'll not enter into that because prison is not under the police. Jail custody death was much more, 4,000 or something. So, this is the issue which we have to keep in mind. That custodial torture is not a new thing. Torture Commission in 1850 found that there was a lot of custodial torture in different police stations of Madras Presidency. And today is the 2020. Human Rights Commission also says custodial torture continues by and large. Not change. So why it is happening? Is it because only some police officers are sadists? Only because police officers believe in rough and ready method? Or there is something else? So this point has to be seen. What is the systemic weakness of the police? As a result, this custodial torture, custodial violence continues. It is true that, that some kind of organization in the police creates some kind of an atmosphere where people come in touch with criminals day and night and develop the idea that only hard methods will carry. Not that all cases of custodial torture are with an intention to kill him, but third-degree methods are practiced, and some of them there is excess, some people die and all, there is a hit and cry. So point is this, that there is a culture in the police also and in the grown-up, what we call the noble cause corruption, that corruption for a noble cause. Here is a criminal, here is a dreaded terrorist, law is inadequate to deal with them, they are not getting punishment, they are cocking a snook at law, so better take firm action against them. You know the case of Hyderabad, where 4 rapists were shot dead because, and the people approve it. This is the crux of the police problem. That large number of custodial torture, violence, encounters have the public approval. And public approval because criminal justice system is not working properly. It takes 10 years to get somebody convicted. It takes, very often they get acquitted. The witnesses are browbeaten. As a result, people feel that the police should take law in their own hands. But this is a point which I have been trying all my years in the National Human Rights Commission and some of us championing the cause of human rights. This is a mistake. This creates an atmosphere that police officers feel that the license to misuse force. And instead of allowing the process of law to continue, this happens. So this is self-defeating, counterproductive, and has to be changed. Then the other point which I would like to mention, which you mentioned, that we can't expect police a lot of changes unless and until the criminal justice system also improves. And the criminals get their deserts. Otherwise, there is a lot of public pressure on the police, and the politicians also like to see that police act accordingly. Many of the third fake encounters are taking place, tortures are taking place, because this is the approval of the political bosses also. They want that the public should be happy, police should go. If in the process some policemen suffer, this is the point. If the process some policemen suffer, it's a bad luck. But our point is, from the police reform point of view, this is a shortcut method. And what happens? Sometimes there are excesses done. Somebody killed in police torture, some woman raped in police station. So whatever all good work of the police is forgotten. Police is also doing some good work, hard work, long hours of work, facing criminals. For example, in India, almost 700 to 800 policemen die in the line of duty. Nowhere in the world so many people die in the line of, so many policemen die in the line of duty. But all good work is forgotten. Whatever suffering of the police, the good work done by the police is forgotten because of some mischievous elements, what they call bad apples, do like this. But it's not a bad apple, you see. Sometimes it is said it's a bad apple. No, it's a culture we have built up within the organization where lack of human rights, and this is democratic policing, this is necessary. To build up within, this is, I have been crying hoarse from the housetop. This is what is necessary to build up a culture within the police organization, human rights culture, which frowns upon abuse and misuse of power. And somehow or other we have not succeeded in doing it. Then, today I used to tell them, many brilliant, many educated, enlightened people join the police service, not only in as IPS officers, it's down the subordinate ranks also. And moment you indulge in kind of shortcut, illegal, extralegal methods, you develop what one of the criminologists, David Bailey, said, you develop a bunker mentality. You hide under the bunker, you conceal statistics, you give false reports. So instead of police work being transparent, police work being appreciated with the public, we go under the bunker and try to hide ourselves. And this is a denial of democratic policing and bring us down the estimate of others. Another point to which I will want to mention is that this is the question of, I mentioned about the inadequacy of number. Inadequacy of number, as a result, we see that people expect in a democratic society that the cases referred to police are properly investigated. Investigation is not done because there is no exclusive staff for investigation of cases. Mr. Mohanty, I can tell you, when I was posted as superintendent of police Cuttack, there was a case, there was a big burglary case, and one of our experts was, as an officer, he knows burglary cases, Parasuram Singh. So I asked Parasuram, you investigate the case, solely your responsibility. Some serious riots took place, and he was detailed for that. For another, I had no answer. For 15 days, he was out. Whatever good case was done was lost. So exclusive investigation of cases, that should be necessary for which the augmentation of the strength of the police. And this is where my experience comes as the director of the National Police Academy. We require good police training institutions to humanize the police, to make it clear that unless and until our means are important, end will be defeated. Illegal through illegal means, noble ends cannot be achieved. This is the point. But unfortunately, what we see, most of the training institutions are ill-staffed. Fellows who are not suitable anywhere are dumped in police training institutions. But that must be the story of training institutions in many other areas. For police, I can speak from experience that it has become the dumping ground of inefficient. A police committee, training committee was appointed, famous Gore committee in the 70s. And he suggested certain changes. He said that there is too much emphasis upon drill, militaristic training, use of force. But in a democratic society, there should be more on interaction with the public, more on responsiveness to the public, more on concern for human rights. So training should be changed. But what had happened is that I must quote the lines of Gore committee, said that unwilling trainers are teaching unwilling trainees. So trainers are unwilling, and those trainees also, they also feel demotivated. So as a result, police training institution is in a very bad shape. And we can't have worthwhile democratic policing unless and until you improve police training institutions. Some institutions will improve. For example, when again Mr. Mohanty our police training institution, they are there at Ongul, in Dhenkanal district of Orissa. It is a village school. Not much facilities were there. Trainers were also some inspectors, sub-inspectors, long years. He's tired, so let him get some rest in the training institution, it is said. So that is the motive. And that by and large, some areas changes have taken place. I have visited police training institutions all over the country. By and large, that continues to be the same. The police training institutions are in a bad shape and they are not able to do it. Other point to which I would like to draw your attention is that infrastructure. Other infrastructure is also poor. Many of the police station staff, police staff are without quarters, government quarters. They stay, and whatever money is there, they stay in urban areas, side by side with criminals. Their sons go to school in slums, whatever money they get. For example, unless and until you get quarters, get a decent quarter on rent by the police is not possible. There is a lack of infrastructural facilities. But what is most important is that social respect is missing. And why? This is the point. Social respect, number one, social respect is missing because police do not enjoy trust of the people. And at the same time, politicians also do not want that it become a popular police force. They may say that we want to, because then they don't have much say in the affair of the police. Police should be divorced from the public. Police should be at the beck and call. So alienated police suit the politicians well. I remember there was once a big tornado Chonja district. We went there, set up a relief kitchen by the police. And the minister said that relief police have nothing to do. You have to maintain law and order. So somehow or other, police are alienated from the public, for which the police culture, police behavior is responsible. But at the same time, politicians also have a vested interest in isolating the police from the public. And the other side, and this is where very often the public mind is swayed by political parties and all this. This is point that somebody asked me, once in a seminar, somebody asked me, Mr. Sen, why Indian police is like this? Look at the British police. They're respected by the public. They're obeyed and respected by the public. Why not? I agree. But at the same time, you tell me, why the Indian public and the British public, the Indian public half law-abiding as the British public? Very often they take laws in their own hand. Very often they resort to violence at the biddings of the politician. And the policemen have what they have to face the storm. So that is a problem of the police, but that is no justification. When I'm saying all this thing, there is no justification for not improving police culture. Whatever the politicians do, they are doing a great disservice to the police. But at the same time, we have our responsibility. We are senior officers. Country expects from us responsible police, honest police, and the problem of corruption also. That is also another problem facing them. And this is happening because this is the essence of the problem. Today, policemen enjoying trust of the politician, they don't care for the public. His continuance in the police station does not depend upon the support of the public. It depends upon the support of the ruling politician. He does not care for the senior officers also because he may salute the senior officer, but by and large, it's the political bosses who are more important. So this cuts across the discipline of the force and creating a problem. So police reform is a need of the hour. Now I will sum it up many points, but I will sum it up with these points. And then I invite questions from you. What is the time? First is, summing up, I'll say there is a difference between police and in a democracy and totalitarian states, which I mentioned. But abuse of police authority and the abuse of power, that is becomes police abuse of power is a big problem which has to be seen. So what is on in a democratic society, what is needed is a neutral police force, non-partisan police force. That is what is to be done. It does not depend which political party comes. These are the rules which are to be followed. The same police which was saluting the chief minister, next day, the chief minister was out of power, as in happening in Madras. They all went to arrest him and drag him out of the house. So everybody has certain basic democratic rights, and this respect for democratic rights has to be cultivated. Police have to be accountable. Democratic police, to sum it up, democratic police has to be accountable to the law, accountable to the court, accountable to the departmental authorities. Sometimes for gross misdemeanor, departmental proceedings are drawn up. Some fellows are pulled up, but hard deterrent action is not always very much taken against them. So that is another problem which we face, that deterrent action is missing in department. And last not the least, what is necessary is to set up some police complaints authorities like Human Rights Commission. We found that not that all cases, many cases were referred to us, but some cases where we intervened, we were able to ensure that the complainant, the victim gets some compensation. Interim relief is to call it, When we give interim relief to some of the victims, some of the chief minister, in one case, the chief minister Orissa said that unless and until he is held guilty in the court of law, why should we accept him? Why should he pay the compensation or interim relief to the victim? The allegation against the police has not been sustained. So we pointed out that this is, and Justice Ranganath Mishra was chairman then, we pointed out that interim relief is an interim relief. And if you do not accept our view, we'll take it up in the court of law. And immediately the government agreed to get the compensation. So accountability has to be ensured by building up complaints authorities to inquire complaints against the police. Many of the states also have set up Human Rights Commission. But unfortunately, many of the state human rights commissions are ineffective. They are dysfunctional, and they do not help the cause of enforcing human rights in the policemen. Police Complaints Authority. Supreme Court has also suggested to most of the states to set up Police Complaints Authority. Some states have done, some states have not done. And the state governments have said that this will erode the morale of the police. On the other hand, morale of the police will be strengthened if some of the bad hats are brought to book. If some of the bad hats are made to realize that they have to pay for the crime they have committed. So this accountability is a must. Without accountability, I still remember that I wrote a book, Police Accountability and the Public Complaints Authorities. To Justice Venkatachalaya, who was the chairman of the NHRC, says, Mr. Sen, of course, he did. Smilingly, he said, Mr. Sen, police accountability, you're talking about police accountability. Is it not an oxymoron? So I said, no, without police accountability, police function in a democratic society is not correct. And other thing also, this respect for women. This has to be, and main problem which I have seen in the police, many of the cases, respect for women, respect for marginalized, backward sections are necessary. Most of the complaints used to come from them, because there I find that our behavior towards them is supercilious. We do not treat them properly. Their complaints are not inquired into, and they are. I still remember that when we from Human Rights Commission in a case in Delhi and all, I said that you won't have to do anything, but to the complainant, you write a letter of apology and say that what the police have done is wrong, it should not be repeated. Policemen were not agreeing to this, but they found that this has a desirable effect. So, respect for human rights and respect for gender sensitization is another need of the democratic policing. Large and police force, the presence of women in the police force is inadequate. It is almost less than 6% or 7%. And crimes against women cannot be investigated properly unless there is adequate presence of women in the force. Supreme Court issued an order that all dowry death cases should be inquired by gazetted women police officers. And we found that very few gazetted officers are at all there. Very few officers, trained women officers are there. So that is another. That is another issue we have. So, ladies and gentlemen, and faculty of the Jagran Institute, I have spoken at rapidly at random on various problems. Serve their own ends. This becomes a difficult task. But the police, in order to redeem itself, must remember that it can be the bulwark of a democratic society. It can be the bulwark of a democratic society. Police behavior, right or wrong, influences others. I have seen many places a sincere police officer, honest police officer, has a great effect on the public and molds public behavior toward the police, toward the government. And this is the challenge we have to face. And in India, if democracy has to be strengthened, and army rule is not to come, democracy has to be strengthened and vitalized, then we require a sensitive police, sensitive to the aspirations of the people, and the people understanding the problems of the police and try to reform them. It is Justice Denning, he said, I can understand you can abuse the police. That's all right. But since you have no other institution except the police for maintenance of law and order, mere criticism will not help. You have to think of the ways and means of reforming the police, changing the police, and examine ways, explore ways and means of doing it. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll be happy to respond to some of the questions.
Thank you, sir. Your lecture was about 35 minutes, 37 minutes, and very captivating because you shared a lot of your personal experiences, especially as you said about the Human Rights Commission, your experience there, and also the experience in the Indian Police Academy, National Police Academy. In fact, long years after you retired from the National Police Academy, I had a friend who was the Police Academy director in 2018, Abhay. Abhay is a very dear friend of mine from my university days, and he also is now the DGP in Odisha. Uh, he also says the same thing about his experience there, that beyond a point, you can't do much about the training of the police officers in the Vallabhbhai Patel Police Academy. I had long discussions with him about this during my last visit to Odisha, and that's a reality that, as you said, there is possibly bigger emphasis on quantity, not on quality. And in the process, as you are saying, that both the structure and the culture of the police functioning has been vitiated over the years. But sir, tell me that in your experience from 1960 when you joined the police force and in 90s when you retired, and then another 20 years in the post-retirement, do you see a steady deterioration in the in the police culture, or do you think it remains the same as it was the case in 1960, and possibly it was the same in 1990s when you retired, and it's the same today as you see things unfolding all over the country?
I personally feel that there has been a definite deterioration in police work and culture, no doubt about it. Now, a large number of this political interference in every aspect of police work was not so rampant, was not so clear at that time. We have, and there's a reason. I must say from my long experience, the political leaders when we joined service, where many of them have struggled in the national struggle have worked in the national struggle for the independence. Many of them were conscientious people. Many of them, yes, they had their own compulsions, but also used to see that the police work does not suffer. I remember one instance that was way back in 64 or 65 in Kalahandi district. There was a student agitation, police opened fire. Of course, none was killed in police firing. So Burman Commission was set up, they gave their views. Chief Minister, I now can mention the name also now, Mr. Sadashiv Tripathi has come. Sadashiv Tripathi was not very, very inspiring, but large number of Congress workers came and asked him, yes, sir, this has happened, both district magistrate and SP should be placed under suspension or inquiry should be started against them. They have opened fire and alienated the student from the party. And Mr. Tripathi's reply was, don't forget, I am the chief minister of a democratic society, democratic system. Without an inquiry, I cannot do anything. And unless an inquiry is held and they are found guilty, nothing can be done. I am incapable of doing it. And that was that. Today, to demonstrate their authority before the followers, they will immediately do this thing. Whether right or wrong, even before giving the officer a chance to explain his conduct. This is another. This is since all this memories come. I was in a Nilmani Rautroy was the chief minister. He rang me up and said that somebody should be transferred. He is doing like this. He is running amok. Change Karan too. I said, sir, let me give it a little time. Let me check up. And then he said, yes, I checked up and found everything is all right. Nothing is wrong. It is an inspired complaint. When I told him, yes, sir, this is the position. What he said, I can well understand. What can I do? This political fellows are all pressurizing me. You do whatever you feel like, I am satisfied. These days, this kind of gestures will not come. This is one part of it. Second part of it is the delay in professionalism. I have worked under officers. I am drawing personal experience because no point in quoting from books. I have worked under officers. Many of them were not IPS officers. They are promoted officers. But they knew the work, the A to Z of the police work well. So far, our IPS officers, many officers concerned, they are not professional. Professionalism was very high. Many of them, not all. Many of them, professionalism was high. And there was insistence on professionalism. If you write something in case that is wrong, I used to get stinkers. Those officers called Mrityunjay Tripathi, oh, we dreaded him. So that kind of professionalism was. And last, not the least, corruption is increased. Corruption is increased. Now, because of easy money available and with the blessings of the politicians are looting, many of the officers are also, both IS and IPS have joined the loot. So this is, so deterioration. That is very sad. Of course, the redeeming features is there are some good people, they feel marginalized, but let us hope things will improve, because unless and until there is a good governance, good administration, good policing, country will go down the hill. So I personally feel that there's a matter of concern. Things are deteriorating. I won't say that in the past it was a golden age, everything was all right. No, it was not. Problems are there. But compared to what we see now, and compared to the men, both at the political level and at the professional level, things are not very inspiring.
Sir, I have just another question on the same line. Today, all the fake encounter specialists in police force, they all are big heroes, not villains. Was it the same in 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s when you were also in service?
See, this is a difficult question to answer in a sense. Today, those who are indulging in fake encounters, in many of the police forces, there are some encounter specialists. They are lauded, but something goes wrong, then they are cast away. But they are lauded, the encounter specialists. In the past, at that time, this kind of encounter specialists were not there because this kind of problem of dreaded terrorists, criminals running amok. But not to bother for the means for achieving them, that was there. One chief minister told me, and I am not very close to him, that way I am an outsider, but he was a respected man, about this dacoit gang in Puri creating havoc. He told me, Mr. Sen, you are a police officer. I said, sir, we are taking action. We'll catch them, prosecute them, and all this thing. You are taking action. Mr. Sen, you are a police officer. You know all the tricks of the game. Do something like that. That was a broad hint. That's what should be done, but not blatant. Not blatant and like this. I must say they are more civilized and decent people.
Okay, sir. I now request Professor B.C. Singh to put his question to Mr. Sen. Please unmute yourself. Unmute. Mr. Sen, Mr. Singh, Dr. Singh.
Yeah. Sorry, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving a very insightful and detailed discussion on police and police reforms, and particularly in the light of our colonial past and, you see, adaptation of this democratic constitutions after 1947. Despite 70 years of democratic experience, nothing has changed much. I mean, this is what I personally think about it. In our police structure in the country, a number of police officers are brilliant, very efficient, very honorable, and committed not only to the constitution, democratic values, but and very honest people like, I mean, must be your junior or contemporary, sir, you are a very senior man, Mr. Rivero, and he has learned respects. And similarly, on the other hand, equally efficient and very well known, Mr. KPS Gill. I'm sorry, sir. I'll tell you one thing. I had attended a program, publication of the book on Mr. KPS Gill. And till that time, I was not aware of the fact that KPS Gill is so well read. It was probably edited by Mr. A.K. Sahni. And that particular introductory chapter of the book deals about his life. And he was very about, I mean, everything, fiction, non-fiction, all kind of things. So on the one hand, we have a model of Mr. Goviro, and the other hand, there is Mr. KPS Gill, equally efficient. And I mean, I can't say that why it happens that within the same atmosphere, within the same democratic structure, there is, in one hand, one kind of a model, and on the other hand, people equally efficient, equally important, but I mean, they don't earn that kind of a repute.
So what is the question?
The question is, I said there are two types of police officers. One, on the one hand, Goviro is also working in the same environment, but his image is quite positive. On the other hand, KPS Gill, equally efficient, but on particularly Punjab Roy, there were lots of controversies.
No, you are absolutely correct. The situation is such in which even now the difficult situation, there are many honest and upright officers. You have just quoted the main name of Mr. Ribeiro. He is respected by all. I am one of the ardent admirers of Mr. Ribeiro. He did a wonderful job in Punjab and also in Bombay. And people respect him. There are many others, not only Mr. Ribeiro. I have seen many other officers also. May not be as well known as Mr. Ribeiro. In Orissa, I've seen very honest, very upright, very correct officers. I'll tell you a story later on. And then you have mentioned about Mr. Gill. I personally know him well. When I was the director of the academy, I asked him to come and take the salute in the passing out parade. Never before a serving officer was asked. Mostly it was Prime Minister or President, but I asked Mr. Gill. So and Mr. Gill is a very well English literature. Question of ends and means. Some of the means adopted by Mr. Gill to deal with the terrorism in Punjab may not be exactly acceptable. But perhaps it was a need of the hour. Whether it could be avoided or not, that was a very serious situation. It was almost a war-like situation. There was a danger the Punjab may break away from India, become a part of Khalistan and something like that. There was a fear. And he boldly took it up. But I still feel that he should have been careful to control the subordinates. Many Human Rights Commission inquired into many problems in Punjab, cases of human rights violation. There were gross human rights violation by the police, and they settled old courts. Many of them were able to extort a lot of money from others. These are the things which happen. Gill turned a Nelson eye. Not that he was involved in it, but in order to keep up the morale of the people and in order to have the fight against the terrorists outrance, he allowed it. I personally feel he should have been a little more stricter on this point. But that does not take away his great performance. He personally was very upright and a wonderful leader of men. Anything happens, he is led from the front. He is not a coward. So that is it. So this is the strong point. But many people don't know. Many in the police are very upright. I worked under people who are absolutely bolt upright. And not only, this is not some senior officer with a little high, better pay, better prospect, subordinate rank. When I was I will tell you a story since when I was the superintendent of police, there was a commission, there was what we call CID, State Investigation Department, Criminal Investigation Department. And his chief was one, Mr. Mrityunjay Tripathi, Orissa. Bold, upright man. But you know, his two sons are criminals, history sheeters. So one day I plucked courage and went and asked him, how, with a man like you, how can it happen? He said, Mr. Sen, you are starting your career where I have finished as a superintendent of police. I spent in the police stations and all, moved from day and night from this place to other. My wife is illiterate. So my sons came in touch with the constables and criminals, and they become like this. I could not do much. So almost I had to hide my tears. But these are the facts. But they, despite that, bold honest. So many honest people are there. But today, end justifies the means philosophy spreading. Many people are thinking, what is there? Let us adopt wrong means so that politicians will be happy. And people will not be unhappy. Many people will also be happy police adopt such methods. But point is that once you adopt corrupt methods and wrong methods, it corrodes your moral fiber and you degenerate bit by bit. And a senior officer degenerates, the entire organization degenerates.
Dr. Giri, would you like to ask a question? Unmute yourself. Unmute. Unmute yourself. Unmute.
Thank you, sir. I have a very short question. I was very delighted to hear you after a long time. I had the good fortune of working with you on a project, and I know that you have done so much to reform the police service. Sir, the question is, just now you said if politicians were away from policing, the controlling the police, maybe things will be better, because police service is so critical. A policeman is the first port of call. Do you think, sir, if they're autonomous, beyond the control of the politicians, they would act better? And within, like the judiciary, the police have their internal accountability, and then that could be better. I know you have organized several seminars and discussion on this issue as well. But what is your thinking today, sir? Is it possible that we should decontrol police politically?
Mr. Sen.
I personally feel police should exercise internal autonomy. There should not be interference in police work. One can understand in policy matters, government may have a say, people's representative may have a say in policy matters, what should be done, whether more women should be recruited in the police or not, whether we should allow reclamation of the criminals or not. That wider policy issues, government as people's representative have a say. But there should not be interference in the police work, in day-to-day police work. Today this has happened. And this is something, as Professor Giri said, depoliticize the police is called for. For example, little personally, I was in London, I had an occasion to meet the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Peter Imbert. So I told him, gradually question, suppose in the transfer posting of officers, do you face any problem? He first could not understand the question. Well, what? I said, in the transfer of officers, do the ministers tell you? So how can it happen? Just it is beyond them. The police work, their work, somebody is asking this man should be posted there, that man should be posted there, case should not be registered, evidence should be doctored. So that kind of thing is happening. This is corroding police. So the institution which Police Commission also suggested that there should be institutions to ensure the internal autonomy. But police also has to be accountable for their lapses, and government must have seen the policy matters, certainly policy matters there we say. So whether some policemen should be sent to Orissa or not for work, or some should be sent to the government of India, these are the wider issues. But day-to-day work, today, many of the states and all, the SPs and all, they have no voice in the posting of officers. All are decided, the MLA with the consultation with the chief ministers and all. So this is spelling havoc. This should be stopped. And for that, recommendations of the National Police Commission and the direction of the directives of the Supreme Court should be implemented. But that the politicians are held. And as I say, there is no difference between the politicians of different parties and all. They are all one. Police should be at the beck and call.
Thank you,
Nishant
sir.
Bhaiji? Nishant? Your voice, unmute. It's not audible. Not audible.
निशांत सर माइक का इशू है, माइक चेक कर लीजिए अपना।
Maybe there is some technical issue. So, you can go to another system. In between, any student has any question?
Yes, sir.
Ask Bhajalakshmi.
Yes, sir. Sir, I wanted to know, how do police authority maintain peace and tranquility while an emergency or outrage or any threat case goes within a state or a democratic country under the pressure of political parties or government, and through which process they go? What are the key elements on which the police authority focus, as they also have to count on their accountability?
This is a wide question, but I'll briefly respond to it by saying that yes, for dealing with the problem of insurgency, terrorism, police have to rely upon the intelligence. The key element in the battle is intelligence. They should know who are the groups who are coming, what plans they are having, what measures they are taking, and to foil them with the help of the police. Number two, they have to ensure support of the public. Without public support, it is difficult to control. Many of the terrorists could be nabbed because the people supported came for Punjab. It happened. Later on, the people came against the terrorists and trying to help the police. So people support is necessary. Naxalite also, the West Bengal police was able to get key intelligence, detection of child Majumdar and all. But because of the public support, they are able to receive at that time. But at the other time is accountability, in a sense that does not allow the police to take law in their own hand. There is a tendency also to have fake encounters, kill the terrorists, because all of them, there are certain human rights, constitutional rights of the victims as well as the suspects also. That you have to honor them. So that should not be allowed. Accountability should be there. And also, I worked in the intelligence bureau. I know that if large number of reports are coming, intercepts are there, phone calls are nabbed, from that you get a lot of good intelligence. Mainly the battle is a battle of mind, battle of intelligence you have to do. But at the same time, sometimes the terrorists are loaded with weapons. They can stacking up arms. You have to raid them, you have to use force with them. But force has to be used, intelligence has to be collected. But by and large, sometimes it is inevitable. If private defense police have to use force. By and large, misuse of authority, fake encounters are to be avoided, because then the police will lose the support of the public. In a sense, you may kill a terrorist, you may give, and in the process you may recreate 10 more terrorists, because people are so annoyed with the problem sometimes happening in Kashmir. So we have to be very careful in the use of force, but force may be necessary. But by and large, you have to rely upon intelligence and dedicated work.
Nishant, your system ready?
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
My question was about the systemic weakness of police when you were talking about the structure and how there are structural problems. And partly you did mention about the example of United Kingdom and how some structures are different there when it comes to the police management and the day-to-day interference in the activities of the police. But what I wanted to know is what about the other nations? Like, how do we differ, or are we similar? I mean, how does our own police organization and the structure differ or have like similarities with the other nations? Or do we have something very independently Indian about it, or are we also like, do we have, is it arranged in a similar structured manner, or is it structured in a similar manner as the other, the country, I mean, police in the other countries are?
See, Indian police has a colonial origin, which I mentioned. And the Police Act of 1861, by and large, in the neighboring countries, mostly ruled by the Britishers, the same thing persists, by and large. There may be little difference here and there. The Pakistan, Bangladesh, which I have seen or visited, Sri Lanka, by and large, it is the same structure, some variation, local variations here and there. Foreign countries I mentioned about the UK. UK, we had the Police Act of 1861. In 1839, British Metropolitan Police Act was passed. And Robert Peel was the Prime Minister. And his other name was Bobby Peel. So the British Constable is called Bobby. So their emphasis was different. Emphasis was that you should respect the rights of the people. Police effectiveness is to be judged by the support it gets from the people. And by and large, police should be unarmed. Now, of course, they're changing. Police on duty and all unarmed. They don't use weapons and all. Structure part of it, the same police station, district superintendent of police is there. But method part of state CIDs, some basic issues are the same. But the objective part of it is the way you deal with the people. And then another basic difference is that here, this is right or wrong is for people, others to judge. You have to work your way from, you are recruited as a constable and then go up. Commissioner of police is also started his career as a constable. Here an IPS officer, I'm joining, after some time I'm becoming a DT or commissioner of police or something like this. But there is different. So you want no lateral intervention, you have to go up. And another structure is that by and large, it is local. Control over the police is local. Village council, these municipalities, they have a lot of say. In America and all, the mayor has a lot of say over the police. Here it is the government control. And here India is a state, different states, police is and chief minister is the boss. Center may give some direction, center may have paramilitary forces, but by and large, center doesn't have much say in the running of the police. So in USA, for example, each state has its own police force, but large number of other police forces are there. For example, university, your Jagran Institute may have its own private police force. Some institute may have their own forces and all this thing. So thousands of police forces are there, but they have some central authority like the FBI, CIA. These are central agencies. So America police force is local, very much. By and large, this is at random, I'm telling, going up, going into. And by and large also, it is under the control of the local authority. But difference with India is a colonial structure, and other colonial countries had it. Many of the countries are now thinking of changing it. But what the Britishers introduced in their own country, they did not do it here because they thought that purpose of a democratic policing and colonial policing are different. But our rulers forgot that. That now a democratic society, but they still believe the colonial police suits them better. That is the tragedy and paradox.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
So
sir. And
I
would-
want to comment on two
Yes.
things that, sorry, so you were saying?
No, I was saying, please go ahead, sir.
I was saying that Scotland and police does not carry any weapon at any point of time. And the other thing is that America police chiefs are popularly elected. What do you have to say to this, sir? The sheriffs are popularly elected. They are the chief of the police.
Sheriff, many, it all differs, you know. Sometimes the governor, the mayor selects his own chief. Sometimes they are popularly elected. Sheriffs are popularly elected. That is true. Very, very odd system, or hundreds of systems are merged together, different rules, different day. But how they, is a miracle, how they run it, despite that some kind of authority is maintained. But Scotland and all Scotland Yard, that is a state CID. They are without uniform. Naturally, here also uniform CID officers do not put on uniform. That is by and large. But executive police everywhere, they are in uniform. Because otherwise people can't recognize you. In the midst of law and order problems and all, they can't recognize you.
Any other question by any student?
Yes, sir, I have a question. Sir, my question to you is, when a particular police force has to inquire or carry out an inquiry or investigation outside the boundary of the state, then why do they face so much problem by the authority, the police authority of that particular state? Why are they obstructed so much?
See, policing is a state subject. Suppose some case comes, for example, the Bihar government sent their Sushant Singh's case for Maharashtra for investigation. It has to take the help of the permission of the state that they are going to inquire into this thing. Normally, state has to do the investigation, but for any help and all, it has to seek the help of the state. So state without, because it is the authority of the state. They are in charge of the law and order. Investigation, policing is their responsibility. Normally, what they do, they take the help for investigation. They are the help of the local police. With their help, they do the investigation there. It cannot on their own, so without informing the state police, do the job, because that may not be allowed. But there are central organizations. For example, some case comes, CBI goes. It has the power to move in different states. Now this NIA is there. It created an act of the parliament. It can go into different states for investigation of cases. But the state police, if it goes to the other state, it has to seek the permission and seek the help of the state which is going.
Any other question by any student?
Yes, sir.
Ask.
So I just wanted to ask you, when we talk about trust among people and police, one of the factors affecting this are the cold cases that are still being unsolved. This creates hopelessness among people and fear among the victims. Do you think this is because of the carelessness of our police in investigation?
Now you repeat the question again. Please repeat.
Please repeat.
Please
Sir, when we talk about the trust among people and police, there are many cold cases that are still being unsolved. This creates a hopelessness among people and victims also get frightened. Do you think this is because of carelessness of police in investigation?
You are correct. It is true that many cases cannot be detected. Even the best effort, police may fail to do so. Even in Western countries also, large number of cases remain where police are far more efficient and better resources. Large number of cases remain undetected. But you are correct. Large number of cases remain undetected because of police negligence. Police do not investigate properly. They do not go to the spot properly. They do not check up properly. So that is also, people are justified in telling. For example, a case has taken place, police have not even visited the spot. So people are justified in complaining against the police. And that is the police point of view. They say their resources are limited, investigators are limited. That is, people are not interested. It's for the government to increase the staff of the police. If the case is given, it's properly investigated. People expect this from the police. So anger of the police is justified, of the public is justified.
Any other questions, students?
यस सर निशान
हाँ, निशांत बोलो।
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि क्या सर ऐसा क्या तरीका हो सकता है कि जो पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेयर है पुलिस पे वो कम किया जा सके, ऐसा कुछ मतलब तरीका हो सकता है?
देखिए, एक पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस कमाने के लिए तो पॉलिटिशियन का, गुड पॉलिटिशियन के रिसोर्ट होना चाहिए जो हम लोग इंटरफेयर नहीं करेगा, पुलिस को काम करने देगा। पहले के दिन में हम जो बताया पॉलिटिशियन लोग वही करते थे, वो एक बात है। दूसरा बात जो है, कुछ इंस्टीट्यूशनल मैकेनिज्म करना, जो नेशनल पुलिस कमीशन बताया, सिक्योरिटी कमीशन करना, जो देखेगा अनइंटेंडेड पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस हुआ कि नहीं, पुलिस का ट्रांसफर का पोस्टिंग के ऊपर चीफ मिनिस्टर का दखल अंदाजी कम करना चाहिए। ये भी देखना चाहिए ये पुलिस के ऊपर हैरेसमेंट नहीं होना चाहिए। कुछ इंस्टीट्यूशनल मैकेनिज्म सजेस्टेड बाय द पब्लिक नेशनल पुलिस कमीशन एंड बाय द सुप्रीम कोर्ट वो होना चाहिए। पॉलिटिशियन को कुछ सेल्फ डिनाइंग ऑर्डिनेंस करके इंटरफेयर मत करना चाहिए, और पुलिस को भी थोड़ा करेज लेके बोलना चाहिए, ये गलत बात आप कहते हैं, ये काम हम लोग कर नहीं सकता है, ये इलीगल काम है। और जो बोला है कुछ करने चाहते हैं तो रिटन ऑर्डर दीजिए। रिटन ऑर्डर तो कोई नहीं देगा, आप चाहते हैं तो रिटन ऑर्डर दीजिए, हमारे रिकॉर्ड में रहेगा। So various mechanisms can be adopted, but provided there is will to do so, will of the politicians to reform themselves, will of the police to assert themselves, and will of the court to force the government to adopt certain measures.
Hope the students are through. Any of our faculty members, anyone want to ask a question to Mr. Sen? Any other faculty member? Anyone? Nishant, you want to ask another question?
Actually, it's not. It's more of an inquiry. I mean, I just want to know, like, what happens, especially in the academies, with respect to gender and the marginalized community sanitization. Like, what kind of training is done? Because you spoke about it. You said that police needs to be sensitized with respect to the marginalized and the women. So is there, while they are being trained, is there a curriculum which is in place? And do you think it's adequate?
Curriculum is in place. There is a training module also for gender sensitization training, training for the backward classes, cases of dealing with atrocities and the delicts and all, what the police have done in certain cases, what they have failed to do, these are the other cases. So training module is there. But what is more important is that the teachers must explain to them properly and see that the student that is not only fair and just to do proper investigation of cases, but how to sensitize the students, not only by some giving exercises, but number one, from hard research work, that these are the details show that these are what actually police are doing in the field, and please avoid that, so that the point goes home. And they themselves must convey the message. Sometimes we say the messenger is the message. So the trainers themselves must convey the message that yes, they feel it. They want the students, as good police officers, they want to do so. I see, and it gives a lot of confidence. If a woman police officer goes inside, in a rape case, I found that the victim say, what they never would tell me, they told everything to them, told everything. And say that you show us the self-empowerment. That so we have number one, also better representation of women, better representation of Dalits in the force, so that these cases, they develop confidence. In their own man, they will develop a little better confidence, and is expected they will be more sensitized. But sometimes in power, we change ourselves, and it's a pronounced attitude of, we have failed, pronounced attitude of the police by and large is not to be sensitive towards the downtrodden communities. Most of the complaints come from them. That's a problem. But if we recognize the problem, feel something should be done, we will be able to find out ways and means.
I hope there are no more questions. Thank you, sir. We had expected this to be over in about 60 minutes, but it's gone past 80 minutes, and you have so patiently responded to the questions by our students and the faculty, and we are indeed very grateful from the whole gamut of experience that you have had in almost 30 years of your career as a professional, and even in the last 20-25 years as a post-retirement life, when you have been working strenuously, assiduously on these issues and addressing the occasions all over the country. We are indeed very grateful. We would like to look forward to your deliberations and benefit from them in the future as well. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us in such a short.
Thank you.